Hey everybody, so this is Inquisitorial Thoughts, episode 3, and this one is probably going to go into two parts, but basically today what I'd like to talk about is generic versus named HQ choices in wargaming. Another way of just saying that is just sort of regular miniatures on the table that you have as lead characters in various games versus actual individuals from books and background, where you'd have one of them in the game. I'm bringing this up just for a couple of reasons. Well, one of the things, I'll be quite honest, is when I started, particularly 40K again, but when I started back into wargaming, one of the things that I really shied away from were named characters, and I think that was more of a personal thing. For those of you that have been watching my recent Kill Team chats, I've talked a lot about my liking the game where you sort of have the unknown guy in the unknown place, like representing, whether it be some battlefield in World War II or some Space Marine librarian on some unknown planet, from a chapter you never heard of, but still representing the Emperor like everyone else, and down, up to his elbows in grit. And I can kind of relate to that, and I guess I'd heard jokes in the past where, I play Eldar, and I've heard jokes about how they'd look at like 4 tables and 3 of them would have Eldrad, Uthway on them. Just sort of as a joke, and it's just like, of course, every time you play, the most powerful character in the universe for that faction is always there. And, that's kind of the way I felt about it. And I'm not going to say that I actually don't still feel that way. I actually, to a certain degree, I really like the Unknown Soldier. I like to play games that, for me, feel like it's more real. It's not like, the pinnacle battle, where everybody who's anybody is there. And so, having said that, if you look right in front of you, this is a bit of a sampling of some lead characters I've done, but I can actually tell you that I have never painted a named character. So if you look at Bolt Action, you look at 40K, whether it be Space Marines or Eldar, whether it be Infinity, and I do own a named character for Infinity, I've just not gotten to him yet, but coincidentally, in any game I've played, just sort of looking around, I have never actually painted a named character, a named HQ choice. I've never painted, with Eldar being my biggest army, I've never painted any of the, now I'm even forgetting their names, but the Phoenix Lords, I've never painted any of them. Now part of that is I actually really detest the models, and I'm sorry, I know they had a place at a certain point, but I just really don't like them. And so that was one thing that really put me off on them. But to a certain degree, there's this whole piece of the named character, and so that I've really shied away from. And so I am going to be interested in other people's thoughts on that, but I'm actually going to turn this upside down now, and you'll find that with a lot of these videos, I'm very double-minded on things, and I try to see things from both sides. And I've kind of come around to the named character in a lot of ways too, and I'll tell you why. With named characters, it now speaks to my love of the background of games. And so when you're reading either real history or when you're really into fiction, and in 40K, like the Horus Heresy that I'm really into, the more you relate to individual characters and they immerse you and make you love the background or the history, all of a sudden you really like these characters and you really identify with these characters. And if you're into wargaming, there's a good chance that if that's the case, you actually would like to play those characters on the table in your games. And so, to a degree, I actually do think that I can see the appeal of that. Now, when I look at, if I use 40K, Warhammer 40K as my reference point, when I started reading the Horus Heresy, there were several characters that I really came to identify with and liked as characters in the way the authors developed them. Now, one would be Loken. If you really dislike Loken as a character, there's a good chance you didn't stick with the Horus Heresy, because the first few books, that's who it pretty much you were seeing through the eyes of. And I can be honest, I was quite disappointed when he died in the books. And sorry, I'll put a big spoiler, you know, for when I said that, for anybody that's hasn't read them yet. But I won't do that anymore, I promise. But Garo is another one. You know, his point in what he did in the story was pivotal, and the way they developed him I thought was amazing. I looked into how they did some further series just on him, but unfortunately it turned out that I believe they're all audiobooks, and I'm not really big on audiobooks. As a matter of fact, I don't even really like ebooks. I'm kind of old-fashioned, and I like a book in my hands, and so I never got any of those. And then lastly, a big one is Ahriman. I'm really into Thousand Sons, and I really liked the Ahriman character and how he was developed. Now, all of a sudden, after I read these books, I think in my head, like, oh man, look at this Forge World character series. You know, I gotta get this one, I gotta get this one. Oh my gosh, I hope they come out with this one. And I'd love to, you know, do some sort of, you know, Thousand Sons with the Ahriman. You know, like that would just be amazing. And so now, like, I'm coming around and I'm saying, well, you know, I can see a place for this. You know, I could see how this would be really fun. And so I'm a bit double-minded. On the one hand, it almost probably sounded like I was trying to develop a convincing argument when I started, in that I really do believe in the Unknown Soldier and like the wargaming mostly for just developing more, like, what feels more, a little bit of realism, or that I buy it, and that it's, you know, kind of down to earth a bit more. But then on the other hand, I'm starting to really like, you know, getting into the characters, and I can see on the historical side, for those of you that watch the channel that are still watching this video, that are into the historical side, you know, I can see somebody playing Americans in World War II and, you know, having General Winters, you know, like in the model that I know Warlord put out a model for General Winters that was like an exclusive, and I could see somebody wanting to use General Winters and wanting to basically have Airborne or something like that and simulate that. I could see somebody, you know, wanting to play pivotal characters in the Napoleonics, or, you know, even in like sort of Ancients too. You know, I could see that as being really desirable as well. And so, you know, I guess for this one, and I don't want this one to go too long, because I am going to do a part 2 on this, and I'm going to take this in a different direction. But for this video, I'm just interested in your thoughts, and whether you have a preference or a strong feeling at all on taking for HQ characters or leadership characters in your armies and in your miniature games, whether you like to take those pivotal named characters, whether they be fiction or whether they be real people that existed, or whether you dislike that, and whether you actually you know, prefer to actually use just generics, you know, generic leadership roles that are sort of personalized to your army, you know. And the only other thing that I'll mention is I tried to think of the pro and the con of each, and I guess for named characters, it seems like in some ways it can restrict imagination, in the sense that you know, you are conforming, you know, your army, your leader, into something that's predetermined, whether it be fiction, you know, it's somebody else's creation, you're basically trying to stick with some sort of background, or whether it be a real historical character, which maybe even more so, you know, actually is you're trying to represent something for accuracy. I guess the pro for having named characters is I think it allows you to potentially further immerse yourself into the background that you really like, whether it be historical or fiction. And perhaps that's actually the pro that matters more to some people, versus you know, having to create something and call it your own completely. And you know, so I don't know. So what are your thoughts? It's sort of an interesting topic for me, and it's going to lead into another video where I'm going to talk a bit more about mythology and fiction, and I purposely didn't talk about the Primarchs in 40k because I have some thoughts. It's a favorite internet discussion to talk about the Primarchs. They're very colorful, just like many other sort of leading characters in various genres. So I hope everybody has a great weekend and interested in hearing your thoughts on the subject.